Steve, episode 23 of the Broadway block. Are you ready? You having a good Monday?
Ready for the season to start, man.
What did,
Um,
what did you think of the minor signings last week?
so it kind of feels like there's still something that needs to happen. Wondering what potentially is next, if anything. It seems like there's a glut at that top winger role, like we kind of ended off last time. Before we started talking on air, we were talking about coaching and what we thought Gallant was going to bring to the team as opposed to a guy like David Quinn. What are you most excited about for Gerard Gallant?
I like Gallant. He's been there with some teams. He brings a lot of NHL experience, and I think he's going to get the best out of every player. I obviously think Quinn tried to do that, but the problem being never being an NHL coach before, it's hard to get the most out of already established NHL players. For Quinn, he was somebody that got the most out of college players who are still developing. In the NHL, I feel it's you got to the talent pool and you know what each person brings, and you have to use that together to make the best NHL team you can with the lineups and everything. And I think Quinn was a very smart man, but I just didn't think he was the right man for the job. I think he still had to develop as a NHL coach. Another thing, Steve thinks he will get hired as another NHL coaching position. I think he could get an assistant job somewhere, and eventually he will go back to a college role. What are you looking most for out of Gallant?
I think you said it well when we were talking before we broke about commanding respect and not necessarily having to walk in and earning respect. I feel like Quinn was in a situation where he had to sort of gain the attention of the room, and there was some falling out. You and I had broken down the writing on the wall to it being Zuccarello that he had had a verbal altercation with that resulted in shortly thereafter Zuccarello being traded. So in a situation where you're trying to gain the attention of your vets and have everybody buy in, Gallant comes in, I feel like already having that on his side where people think maybe, look, we could be like when he was there in Vegas or when he was there with the Panthers. So I think one of the things that he's shown too is he can develop prospects, especially when you look at the time he spent with the Panthers when they were getting access to Huberdeau and highlight prospects that they were trying to not butcher the process. He was understanding that they needed to be thrown into the deep end and get that ice time. So I'm looking forward to that. I think Lafreniere and Kakko are going to benefit from it greatly, and we're going to find out what we have in our young crew. You had mentioned something about Chris Knobloch and that short, I believe it was 6 games that he spent with us during the middle of the season when David Quinn
We went 6-0,
had
right?
contracted. Four and 2. I feel like he went.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
could be
I think
wrong,
we
but
lost that Washington game, and then
we did. We had a few in a row that were good. You had mentioned perhaps less time or less pressure rather during that time period.
you had mentioned that they were Quinn's lineups and goalie decisions.
Do you think that the on ice behavior? I mean, some of those games we crushed them. Do you think that that is indicative of somebody having less pressure on them in a situation where maybe Quinn's message is not getting across?
Well, I think Quinn obviously had the right idea, because I think that was 2 of those Flyers games were like 8+ points. So I think he had the right idea out there. Just the pressure he added, that you had to play a certain role, and if you didn't play that role, you didn't fit in, and weren't as good. You also had, when we were off air, had said that you thought that sometimes Quinn thought we were overconfident in our game, and that we had a almost arrogance to our swagger. But I think the right coach would have taken that arrogance and channeled it into the next game and been like, dude, we just crushed them 8-0. Let's go crush this team. I think when Quinn was out there, he was like, if you don't do A, B, and C, we're not going to win the game, which I wholeheartedly disagree, because there's some players, they don't play A, B, and C. They play their own game. Like if you look at a person like Chris Pronger, like previously he would go to the Blues. He made sure anything happened, hard-hitting guy. But anytime he was out there, he didn't play the typical NHL game. The game came to him and he played his game. I think Quinn didn't do that with players. He added too much pressure. This is your role and this is what you're supposed to do. And if you divert from that, then you're not what the team needs. So I think during those 6-game periods, yeah, Quinn had the right people out there. I think it was a much more different confidence level knowing that you're not going to get reamed out if you didn't do B correctly. And Knobloch got more out of people than Quinn. So I'm very interested to see what we have a lot of the same characters we had last year. Um, Obviously, I like our signings that we did. We got a little tougher this year. I also like that we've also refocused on re-signing some people like Heedle, even some of these Wolfpack people like Gettinger and Huska, who's I think he went 21-17 last year with the Wolfpack winning record. And a Tyroning, like, we're keeping our people and our prospects happy, but we're still keeping open for if we wanted a big fish, if it comes at the right price. So I'm really excited for the season, and I'm really excited to see what Gallant's going to bring to the table. Press conference
Well,
got me pepped up, so can't wait.
you had mentioned about knowing your role when you step over the boards. That's something that Gallant has already preached. So it's going to be interesting to see if people are maybe resistant to that role. Guys like Julian Gauthier, who have been top scorers their whole lives, maybe he can be convinced to play more of a fourth line goal, and then like you said, something like the offense will then kind of come to you. So it'd be interesting to see what we have. I think it's pretty clear cut what we have up front, and maybe these back end tougher signings will prove to be. I know we touched on it. I'm a big fan of a guy like Sammy Blais on your left, a guy like Ryan Reeves on your right, and then if you're centering that fourth line as Morgan Barron, who's more than 6 feet tall and plenty of capable of throwing the body around, as we've seen, who also has a bit of a scoring touch. It'd be great to have a real designated identity line like Gallant typically likes to have on his teams anyway. So moving forward, the goalie situation, I wanted to brush up on Igor looking like he's due to sign a $6 million-ish contract in the works here soon. Going forward as Georgiev and Igor, it looks to be like that's what our tandem will be moving forward. How comfortable are you in those two?
Well, I think obviously I've said it in previous blog posts before. I think Georgiev has gotten the short end of the stick, even like when we had that basically like wild card playoff. Hank getting the call up when we know Georgiev should have gotten that call up. Our focus has been getting Igor ready, and I think Georgiev has done the right things and being okay with taking a back wheel. If I was Georgiev myself, I would think I could do a starting role compared to how I played. I played well. I think he plays well, better against the Islanders than Igor does. So I think it's time for Georgiev to prove that. He might not be with us long term. He might be more of like a Cam Talbot or Antti Ranta if something happens to Igor and he really showcases his skills. But I like the combo. I think it's good. I think Igor is going to just keep getting better. And if we play the right card with Georgiev, he'll be a great number 2 for us and eventually maybe a good trade asset that we could use.
Well, you talk about the money going to Igor there and a little bit of the signings that have happened over the last few days. What do you think about Fox's new contract that he ought to be due if you look at the signings around the league and some of their premier defensemen?
Well, I think he's definitely, we talked about this a little bit. If you look at Darnell Nurse of the Oilers, they just locked him up for 8 years, 74 million. So production wise, Nurse had a great year, but if you look at Adam Fox, he had a better production year. Then you can look at the Islanders who locked someone up like Pelech for 5 years. The dollar amount was undisclosed, but people were saying it was around the 5 million mark, maybe a little more, give or take. So I think there's 2 ways you could go about Fox. Either you give him a shorter contract to help us out on the cap end on the front end, like a 3 to 5 year one, but he's going to be doing it with more money. And I don't know if you want to risk having to re-sign him then at that point, especially if things have not gone the Rangers' way. You don't want to lose him to another team because he's getting to the point where he's older. And we also forget that he spent a lot of time, with Carolina, being signed by the Sabres. He lost a lot of time like that, so he's due his money. So I'm hoping we lock him up for long term, but I'm okay with whatever Chris Drury decides. It's more of a cap situation on the rest of the players and the pieces that will be there. So when is this is his last contract year, correct?
I'm pretty sure a lot of these are going to be ending around the same time, which again, there's this thought that we have all this money in place for another free agent signing. It doesn't seem like we're really going to have the money once we hand it out to guys like Lafreniere and Kako and people like Heedles. I mean, their bridge contract is going to be over in a couple of years. 2 years from now is going to be a really interesting time as far as our money situation is concerned. So, yeah, I can see, like you said, Fox cutting, what he's due production wise. I mean, outscoring guys like Hedman, winning a Norris is definitely going to up your value as much as it already is through the roof. I feel like as true Ranger fans all know how much he played a big role in our team. And on that topic of Gorgiev and on the topic of Fox, thinking about all year in 2020, people were talking about perhaps D'Angelo and Gorgiev being traded. So crazy to look back at what has happened and what's transpired here with Tony D'Angelo never leaving, doesn't open up a position for Fox to have the crazy season that he does, and for us to really see what we have in Adam Fox. Tony now signs with the Hurricanes as a member of now, I believe, 5 other Rangers that have signed there as well. And then you look at Georgiev now being the backbone and, like you said, sort of the 1B and falling into that Cam Talbot, Ranta category. It's funny, I was going to bring up the same names, where he's good enough to be maybe the goalie somewhere else, but not when you have a guy like Igor ensconced in that role. So hopefully Georgiev is happy and content making his cool $1 million to hang out and back up and be there when we need him. But yeah, barring any injury situation where he has to step up into a role, I do assume that Igor will take the majority of the starts. And lastly, the Pelech money. You're talking about a guy that can prove his worth there. Who do you see as a Rangers defenseman, being that one of our deeper prospect positions? If you're already handing out big money to Trouba, you've already locked up Lindgren for 3 years, and Fox is due money. Who do you see as maybe a fourth top 4 guy that we can promote or sign long term to?
Well, I think the choice will be up to the Rangers on who really gets the ice time and really shows. Obviously, we are pretty stacked in the prospect pool with Schneider, Zach Jones. We're gonna have, obviously, bringing in Niemeth. Like we have people back there, so we will see kind of as the season starts going. We'll keep filling in prospects and seeing if they fit in. And I think we'll know that in a couple months into the season. Injuries will happen. We'll fill in people as needed, and we'll go from there. Another thing I wanted to bring up, though, was I've been reading a lot of names about Brady Tkachuk. We mentioned that. From what I've read, he doesn't want to lock up with the Senators unless he knows, he doesn't want to sign the max 8 years with the Sens unless they're going to actually develop into a championship team, which they made some good offseason moves, but I don't know if it's enough for Tkachuk to stay. They mentioned that signing a smaller 2 to 3 year deal, which, mentioning our timeline on all these 2-year contracts, maybe we phase out a Hedel and we bring in a Tkachuk. Who knows? That might open up. Another guy I've heard linked that I think is going to arbitration is Kevin Fiala. Anybody who knows in fantasy, if you picked up Fiala last couple of weeks, he was the man for you. So be interesting to see. There's fish out there. I don't know if we're fishing or not, but we'll see. What do you think about those?
Well, I actually drafted Fiala, so I would agree with you. And I would say, I guess maybe my question should have been, who are you most excited to see in that role? And for me, it's got to be Keandre Miller, because the idea of shoring up 2 kind of skilled defensemen to stay in your top 4, and then 2 kind of physical defensemen in Lindgren and Trouba, and then your skilled guys in Miller and Fox. And then to boot, these guys can also play defense and not just contribute offensively. That sounds to me like a really exciting top 4. And like you said, because we're so deep, maybe that does make somebody available to force a trade in somebody who's a offensively minded but hard-nosed player, in a guy like a Tkachuk or a Fiala. I feel like Tkachuk is more unrealistic. Like, let's be honest, unless we're
the Sens let him go?
right, unless we're. However, it's seeming, if you're going to be able to get a guy who's saying, look, I'm not willing to commit, if you're not willing to commit, that does make us more of an attractive landing spot. And we've been saying for years that we need to create that attractive landing spot where someone can see, man, they really are a top center away, or man, they really are a top
Well, we've been doing that.
middle
We've
winger
been doing
away.
that for years, and people are coming. Like, Panarin, he could have gone obviously with the Islanders, who were more ready for making a playoff run than where we were. But to make a comparison to the Knicks can't sign any free agents because no one wanted to come to New York, the greatest arena to come play. They haven't. So they brought in a Thibodeau as their coach. They won with people. They had a good season, finished fourth last year. And this year they were able to get maybe not an A superstar, but they were able to get B, Kemba Walker. Okay, so let's say same thing. They start winning. They have another good winning season. Maybe next year one of these free agents signs with the Knicks and comes back because everyone went to the Nets. So if you don't, as you were saying, if you don't make it an attractive landing spot where you think you're just going to waste your career, why would you want to come? I understand for Tkachuk and the Senators.
Yeah, so for me, it boils down to if we make another move, I would almost lean in the direction of if we do, it has to be a small one. And small could still mean a guy like Hedel. Like to me, that's a big thing, but small in that I don't see an Eichel-esque move happening. And for
Would
me,
you
I'm
give
really
up
excited.
Tackle for Eichel?
We were talking about this privately, and it still astonishes me. And I love that we have different opinions of things, which is what makes this so fun to talk about. And for anybody who manages to watch this, we want to know what you think about these things, because this is why it's so
Hit
fun.
us up in the comments. We're always looking.
Kako being a better player long term than Lafreniere. That is your prediction, as well as the Quinn bet. We have something else on the side. Joe's of the mindset that Kako's hard-nosed mentality will lend itself to that stubborn dedication that you'll need to succeed. And after he scores, it's on to the next one. And for Lafreniere, I see that boy-esque, really happy, eager to be out there and just absorbing and soaking in every moment. So love to hear what anybody else thinks. But Joe, if I didn't say that correctly, if you'd like to
You're
elaborate on that.
100% spot on. Like, I think Kako is always underestimated. People always think, well, he's this great player, but he's not the McDavid out there. I think he's always going to have a chip on his shoulder. And I think like what we were saying, like laughs happy, he points to the guy like Kreider does. Like, thank you so much. We got this goal. Kako's like, I'm on in the next one. We did everything we were supposed to. And I think he's always going to be a grinder. So I love those kinds of players. That's how I was as an athlete. I always, wasn't on a team I was supposed to be or wasn't supposed to be there. And hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. I'm a big believer in that. So I love to hear from you guys. Who do you think? Kako or
So just to clarify, I think Kako is highly talented and works hard, and we're both scrubs comparatively. But
scrubs.
I do give the edge to Laugh, but I want to see these guys develop. And apparently Kako's metrics were really high in the defensive category this year. So if he can continue that defensive mindset, I know the offense will come for a guy who's so talented. So like you said, if you can combine that hard work with your talent, then you're good to go. But I think that about calls it for this week, man. Look forward to talking to you soon and to see what moves. We're still kind of eagerly waiting for what moves might happen. But
how many days left till the NHL season? Well, we got 90.
We're into 60, man. It's 60 and some change. But we'll try to keep up every week and talk about what moves, if any, are made. And as always, cannot be more excited for the start of the season.
Go Rangers. All right. Thanks, Steve.
Talk to you soon, Joe.
Have a good one.
Thank you, buddy.